From Mountain Home to Raft River, we've got all the District 4 analysis you'll need to know. This is the Magic Valley Prepcast with Scott Burton.
That's right. It's time for another edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking out everything going on in District 4 in the state of Idaho. Brandon Baney alongside Scott Burton. Scotty, what's up?
Oh, not much, man. Just trying to make it through the day without falling asleep. It's been a long one.
Well, and just so you inside baseball here, we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. You got a long ways to go in the week still.
I know. We usually record this on Wednesday, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, my days are all goofed up. And
yeah.
And as evidenced by our wardrobe choices.
Yeah. So for those of you that are watching the video on the IdahoSports.com YouTube page or YouTube channel or Facebook page, you're going to see that we're wearing like very strikingly similar blue shirts here. It's a little unsettling.
Yeah, got white stripes and everything else. And, you know, it's called Dress Like Your Hero Day, Brandon.
Very synergistic, I would say.
You can't use those big words around me like that. You kidding?
Yeah, that's a $10 word. So
that's a triple word score right there.
We'll go back down to $1.99 for Scott. Okay, so let's talk about and the audio version of this podcast, of course, at IdahoSports.com or wherever you download your podcasts. So last week we kind of did the deep dive into the girls basketball teams in our area who we thought would be good coming into the season. And earlier this morning, Scott, we got the very first girls basketball coaches polls of the season. So this will also give us an idea of what the coaches are thinking out of the gates. In terms of Magic Valley teams, 2 Magic Valley squads made the top 5 in Class 4A. Burley currently tied for first with the defending champions from Blackfoot. Blackfoot's 6-0. Burley is 7-0. And then Mountain Home also got into the poll, tied for 4th, and they're off to a 4-2 start. So Burley we knew was going to be good coming in this year, but it's nice to see Mountain Home get a little respect out of the gate.
Yeah, you know, I mean, both of those teams are teams that, you know, we talked about are bringing some people back and some important people back too. And they were the 2 representatives out of District 4 last year, Burley and Mountain Home. And when they return, you know, a pretty good nucleus, or at least their best players, you know, they're going to get some love right away. And the defending champs, obviously, and until they show otherwise, I mean, they're off to a hot start. So, you know, there's some good teams, you know, and Mountain Home and Preston tied for that last spot, you know, and people are looking at Middleton going, all right, well, 3-3, what's going on with that? Well, you know, look at who they played, and you know, and Middleton is always tough. I don't know. I like this. There are some good girls basketball teams listed there.
Yeah, I think early on in the season, there's a lot of respect votes, right? Teams that have been good in the past kind of get the benefit of the doubt in the early going, and I think that's what happened with Middleton. So you're right, a lot of good basketball teams on the girls' side in 4A. The next time we see a Magic Valley team crack the polls isn't until the 1A D1 classification, right. And that's where Murtaugh and Raft River both tied for 4th. Actually, it's a 3-way tie for 4th in the coaches poll. Grace, Murtaugh, and Raft River. Murtaugh 5-1. Raft River 4-0. How about that start by the Trojans?
Yeah, not a bad start at all. I mean, you know, Butte County is off to a lightning fast start. 6-0 already, but it's nice to have here we go with Murtaugh, Raft River, you know, conference people just, you know, hanging out at the bottom of the pool and kind of see what they do, but they're off to great starts. And we talked a little bit about, you know, Murtaugh last week when we did the girls preview, you know, and Coach Jensen over there in Murtaugh, and, you know, been around a while and got some experience coming back. So, I mean, it's nice to see them crack in right away and off to a good start.
And then the 1A D2 poll, Richfield finds themselves 4th in the first poll. 7-2 are the Tigers. I feel like they're halfway done with the schedule already.
You know, we talked about Richfield too. We talked about Richfield's ability to play defense. You know, that was one of the talking points that we had about the Tigers last week. And, you know, quick start. Can't complain with a 7-2 beginning. Hard to imagine it's 9 games they play. Seems like we're just getting started. That's halfway through the regular season.
Can we talk about that for a second, Scott? Because you are an athletic director. For those that may not know, Scott, in addition to being a broadcaster at IdahoSports.com, you're also the athletic director at Jerome. Where I grew up in Montana and other states I've been in Nebraska and Wyoming, the boys and girls basketball seasons are run concurrently. They both start on the same date. They both end basically on the same date. And a lot of times the schools will play doubleheaders, boys and girls varsity doubleheaders, to alleviate travel, but also because parents may have children in high school of both genders that are both playing basketball. And it's hard to split up families like that when they're on the road traveling, whatever. So my question is in Idaho, I really don't like how girls basketball starts 2 weeks ahead of boys basketball, especially because state football is going on. I feel like girls basketball doesn't get the full spotlight it deserves because it's overshadowed by the football championships.
Yeah, I can see that, and I would be interested to know from an official scheduling standpoint if that gives them any leeway at the beginning of the season, at the end of the season, as far as those things go. But to your point, yeah, you can make that argument. I mean, the girls' basketball season, the first part of it gets swallowed up pretty quickly by state football, and then by the time they finish, everybody's into boys basketball at that point. So I mean, it's and I've been here a long time in Southern Idaho, basically my whole life. So that's 33 years.
I'm a good host. I'm going to let that float out there.
Okay. And, it's always been like this, where it's been boys season, girls season, the girls all play together, the boys play together. But the only time that we've ever really done that, boys varsity, girls varsity, are on special occasions and special nights. So, that's something that as far as I know, Idaho's never really done on a consistent basis.
It's interesting. And the answer I've heard from people is, well, volleyball gets done so early, so the girls are kind of just sitting around anyways. Well, in Montana, the volleyball championships are later in the season. They don't conclude until it's closer to the end of football season. So I don't know. It's I'm still getting used to it, Scott, here in my second full year of Idaho high school sports.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of differences that you've seen from where you're coming from. That just being one of them.
Yeah, for sure. So girls basketball off and running. Some teams like a third of the way through their schedule already. Some teams have just 1 or 2 games under their belts. That'll all even out in January. Let's switch over to our boys basketball previews. It was kind of the opening week last week, and so we finally had some boys basketball games. We've got all of our boys basketball previews up on our website, IdahoSports.com. Even though most everybody has tipped off, it's a good refresher of players to keep an eye on as we really dive into the heart of the schedule here. So let's start in the Great Basin Conference, the 4A level. Coming in, the preseason coaches poll, Jerome Tigers picked first, and for good reason. They were a really outstanding team a year ago and bring back some really talented playmakers. I think they only lose one senior, Alfredo Ortiz.
That's correct. I mean, they lost a pretty good athlete and a really good defender. I mean, he was the guy that would just lock down the best player, but they're bringing back everybody else. They're bringing back their point guard, they're bringing back their post, they're bringing back their shooting guard, they're bringing back their other wing. 4 of their 5 starters are coming back, and that's huge. And they were all scorers. Ortiz wasn't a scorer; he just did all the other intangibles. So this is going to be a really good Jerome basketball team. They're off to a 1-1 start. They beat Buell to open their season. Beat them by 20. And we'll talk a little bit about Buell here in a little bit, but then they lost the other night in a nail biter to Bishop Kelly, 59-55. And, and I was obviously at that game, and it was just 2 4A heavyweights slugging it out, and Bishop Kelly is one of those teams. I mean, they're ranked number 1 right now, and rightfully so. I mean, people were talking Bishop Kelly and Middleton are going to be the top 2 teams, at least initially, in this 4A classification. And that's kind of where they're finding themselves in the polls. But this Bishop Kelly team is legit. They lost Max Rice, who transferred out, Leon Rice's son, but they still bring back just size. I mean, Hawthorne comes back, and that guy is a beast. They've got kids that can just shoot the rock. I mean, they've got it inside out. They play hard defensively. And they had a chance to put Jerome away. They got up by 20 in the second half, and Jerome said, "You know what? Let's start playing ball here." And they cut it all the way back and actually had a chance towards the end to have a possession to tie it up, but they couldn't pull a rebound, and it cost them. So watch out for Jerome, but watch out for Bishop Kelly too. Man, they're good.
Yeah, BK is a team to keep an eye on for sure. They took third place at state a year ago, and it's people forget that. I think it kind of got overshadowed by some of the other stuff going on. So Jerome brings back the 4 starters. Mikey Lloyd, who's a great inside-outside player. He can go inside and bang down low if you need him to, but he's a great three-point shooter. Scott Cook handles the ball. He's a great ball handler, distributor. Gavin Capps is the center inside, and Skylar Maurer is also a kind of a hybrid wing player. He can play inside, outside. And the thing is that all these guys have been starting since they were young, right? I think Cook started as a freshman. Lloyd started as a sophomore. Maurer was a sophomore last year. He started. All these guys have tons of varsity experience as well.
Well, and that's the thing. That's what these guys are bringing back is experience, and the experience that they were missing was what they got last year because they played at the state tournament, and it's a whole different ball game. I mean, you talk about these teams that are bringing everybody back. Okay, so what is their experience at the state tournament? Because that makes a difference. And for these kids coming back for Jerome, they have got some state tournament experience, which is great. And so this is going to be a really good conference in the boys, this Great Basin, because you've got a couple of teams there that could really make some noise and get better as they go. And again, injuries will derail any of these, but it's a tough conference.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a separation. I think there's a clear top 2. I think Jerome and Minico are the 2 early favorites. So, and then there's a bit of a gap. And then 3 through 7, throw a dart at the board. I really do think it could be anyway, kind of like in football. We weren't sure how it was going to shake out. So Minico also looks good. I know Brevin Trankel had a hand injury in football, may impact his abilities on the basketball court in the early going, but they've got other players they can lean on as well. Like Clayton Wilson, Trey Fletcher was a guy that played inside last year. So, and they've got a great coach in Brady Trankel also.
They do. Minico's going to be the team that's going to ugly it up on you. They're not going to let you get comfortable or settle into a rhythm. They're just going to make it ugly. Slow it down and make it ugly. But the problem with Minico is they lose if they ever lose Brevin Trankel, they have lost a significant amount of their points because I think he had 20 some of their 40 some the other night, and that's just the way Minico is going to be. They are going to rebound, play slow, get in your face, ugly, physical. But the thing that makes that work is they've got Brevin that can score, And so hopefully his injuries, and I know he's been battling some, are able to work themselves out and he's able to play, But if they lose him, man, Minico is going to be in trouble. And it's mainly just because they won't be able to score the basketball.
It's been their problem for the last couple of seasons now. They defend really well, but when they need a basket late, it seems like they haven't been able to get that crucial bucket that they've needed down the stretch, whether it's in the playoffs, districts, whatever. But I do think Minico looks very solid early on. And then I think there's a bit of a gap between Jerome and Minico and the rest of the league. Burley was picked to finish 3rd in the preseason coaches poll. They were a young team last year that kind of took their lumps. They've got a second-year head coach in Max Stannard. What do you think about Burley?
Burley's interesting because, you look at they've got a couple of kids coming back, Paige, one of them, and they're off to an 0-2 start. But they played 2 really good teams to open the season, Preston and Pocatello. And Preston was a close game. And Pocatello was a blowout, 23-point blowout. But they're going to hit. It's like Burley's playing the eastern side first, and they're as great basketball over there. I mean, we've talked about this in the past where, you separate the state by regions, and it just seems like the eastern part of the state, especially in 4A, they have got quality basketball teams going on over there, year in and year out. And Burley's starting their season first 3 games out of the East, so they're gonna have a couple of fights right away out of the gate. Preston, Pocatello, and Century's next. So Burley's going to be okay.
Yeah. Mountain Home picked 4th in the preseason coaches poll. Might have the best overall player in the conference, Brandon Bethel. He's one of these guys that because he's basically started since day one as a freshman. I feel like he's one of these guys like JJ Redick at Duke. I'm like, dude, Brandon Bethel's been there for 7 years. Can we go back and check the records?
Oh yeah, no kidding. And we'll talk about Canyon Ridge here in a minute about guys going to be there for a bit. But Bethel is, he's a fun kid to watch. He can handle the ball. He can shoot the ball. He's quick. He understands the game. Obviously he's got the pedigree, but man, this kid is capable of carrying a team on his own. If he gets just a little bit of help, this is a guy that can really make a huge difference. And Mountain Home, they're 1-1 coming in. They, lost to Highland and beat Kimberly. They have Twin Falls. Now, that'll be a good game. Twin Falls and Mountain Home. That's going to be at Mountain Home on Thursday. And that'll be interesting because now what you're going to see are those teams that you just got done talking about, the Mountain Homes, the Burleys, the Twins. How are they going to match up against each other? And I think we're going to get the first look of that this Thursday with Mountain Home and Twin. But Bethel, that kid's a player.
Yeah, and of course his father, Brian Bethel, the head coach at Mountain Home. I do think if anyone's going to unseat Minico for that second position, Mountain Home has the potential just because of what Brandon Bethel can bring. It reminds me of Wood River had a guy a couple years ago, Johnny Radford, who single-handedly could swing a game either direction, and it's kind of a similar thing at Mountain Home. I feel like.
No, I think that's a really good comparison too, because Radford was just one of those guys that didn't have a supporting cast. He really didn't, but he was so good that he was able to get into the paint. If you can get into the paint and make your guys, the other team come off defensively, you're going to have open guys. And you guys like Radford and Bethel that are going to find those guys, because a lot of times what you get with the single star players on these teams is that, man, they're just great shooters. They're great shooters. Well, how does that get everybody else involved? That's not it. So those fantastic players that we continue to talk about year in and year out, they're getting everybody involved. That's what Radford did so well up at Wood River. He could drop 30 on you, but he's going to have a guy that would never score 10 in a game, score 15. And it was all because of what he did. Well, Bethel is kind of that same player. He's able to put the ball on the floor and get to the rim and then hand it off to a teammate because everybody else had to come over and help. And that's what the great players do. They just don't shoot the ball or dunk the ball. They get everybody else around them better. And you have a couple of players like that in this conference.
Mountain Home has had a lot of size over the past couple of seasons, like 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", and they just haven't been able to utilize it. So, that'll be another key again this year for Mountain Home. Twin Falls picked 5th, Canyon Ridge picked 6th, the two schools in Twin Falls. It's interesting. Twin Falls had a very senior-heavy roster last year, and they're having to kind of rebuild. They've got one player returning. It was a starter, Zach Ball, at center. And Canyon Ridge kind of took their lumps last year. By the end of the year, they were playing quite a few freshmen and sophomores. And what do you think of the Twin Falls schools?
Well, Twin's going to have to – Twin's twin. They're always going to be good eventually because they do things well over there. They D you up. They're patient on offense. They're just a very well-disciplined program over there. Now, they've lost Matt Haar, and they're moving on to his retirement, but Twin is still going to have that reputation of playing good defense, not turning the ball over. They do those things very, very well. So give them a little bit of time. And I think they're going to really start to make some noise mid-season. Now, Canyon Ridge is a team that I think people could easily overlook. They've got some players and they've got some size. You look up and down that Canyon Ridge roster. Funk is a big kid, and Lapumba, that kid, dropped 34 and 16 on somebody the other night, or 32 and 16, whatever it was, double. But, that's a kid that came in as a refugee over at Canyon Ridge and has just found a home and found a stride. And, he's now been granted a 5th year of athletic eligibility. So this is supposed to be his senior year. Next year will be his senior year. He'll play 5 years of high school sports. And down here, it is kind of making a little people scratch their head, because that doesn't happen very often. He applied for a hardship, to the IHSAA and was granted it. And now all of a sudden, people are going to go, well, this kid should have graduated. No, guess not. He's going to play another year, So, yeah, Canyon Ridge is circling themselves right now with some stuff. This being one of them. But don't take that away from the fact that this kid is a player. All that aside, this is a guy you got to watch out for. Because he is big, he's tall. You can't coach that stuff, and he's just agile. He's fun to watch. Jerome plays Canyon Ridge tonight on this Tuesday that we're filming, and so as soon as we're done here, I'm headed over that direction.
That's going to be a fantastic game. And again, what we're talking about might be a little out of date by the time you're listening to it. Just go to IdahoSports.com. We've got all the scores, all the updated standings, everything you need to know. Just check in each and every day on IdahoSports.com. Wood River was picked 7th. They've got a young coach, Eli Stein, getting ready for his 2nd season. I really think it's his first because they were kind of impacted by COVID-19 a lot last year. Wood River's always a tough team to peg because even though they start, freshmen and sophomores, there's no guarantee those kids are going to be back on the team as families move in and out of Haley a lot, it seems like.
Yeah, there are certain places that are really tough to coach for various reasons. And we found out that through this COVID stuff, Wood River was one of those, because a lot of times, when you take those games away from kids, you're rebuilding programs after that. And Wood River has kind of caught themselves in that situation. They still have their mask mandates up there, and so you go to a gym in Wood River, you got to wear a mask. You are entering that building as a player, you're wearing a mask. The only person that I don't think they're making wear masks up there during basketball games is the head coach while he's actively coaching. Other than that, you're masked up and you're not bringing food in there. You go down the road a ways, it is a completely different animal. And so Wood River becomes one of those interesting places because they are the ski town, the mountain biking town, the soccer town, the tennis town, they excel at those things. And basketball has always been one of those tough things to coach in Wood River because, a lot of those kids during the winter, they want to go skiing and snowboarding. That's their culture up there. And so you get this revolving door of coaches sometimes. You get this revolving door of athletes sometimes, up in Wood River. So, we'll see what they can bring to the table this year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's almost like a home court advantage. Not quite, but, if they're used to it and other teams aren't, could tilt the scales in their favor a little bit. We'll keep an eye on it.
I'll tell you what, from coaching for almost 30 years in basketball, one of the worst places I hated to go was Wood River to play. It was just different. We seldom had our best games there. It was just different. And so, Wood River's got a little advantage up in the north there because people show up and I don't know what it is. But I hated going there just because we always had them on the schedule, always had to play them. But, it was one of those times we always said to ourselves, let's just get out of here with a win. We don't care how it looks. We don't care what happens. Let's just get out of here with a win. And that's how we felt every time we went there.
Yeah, it is. It's a unique situation for sure. If we move to the 3A, the SCIC preseason coaches poll had Kimberly 1, Filer 2, Buell 3, Gooding 4. Honestly, I don't know how to peg this. It could be Gooding 1 instead of 4. It could be Gooding 2. It could be really any combination of the 4 teams. I think they're all pretty equally matched.
this is a conference here from top to bottom is going to be fun to watch, because they just don't have a whole lot of sleepers in this one. And you could flip a coin to see who it's going to be, right now, Kimberly is, off to the 2-1 start. They lost their only loss coming to Mountain Home, a 3-point loss. But they have beaten Sugar and they have beaten Wood River, and I don't sleep on Buell, Buell, even though they lost their opener, to Jerome by 20, that's a team that's got some players. They've got some size. They've got a kid that can really shoot the basketball. And, they started with 2 losses in their season, went out, lost to Snake River, who's a powerhouse in that 3A, by 1, so I would not sleep on Buell at all. And as far as Filer is concerned and Gooding, throw them right in the mix too, because, Filer has got some kids that can play as well. And they're off to a 2-1 start, with their only loss coming to Snake River. But they beat Coal Valley and they beat 4A Wood River. So I don't know. That conference, Kimberly, Gooding, Filer, Buell, roll the dice.
And every team has studs on it. I mean, you look at Kimberly. Gatlin Bear was the conference co-player of the year as a freshman last year. Mm-hmm. He's only a sophomore. They've got Jackson Bear back. Gooding's got Curtis Atkinson and Cooper Pavkov. Filer's got Tegan Tews and Joseph Bertow. And Buell, I think, has the biggest X factor. They've got a kid that transferred in from Utah. He'd been at Green Canyon High School in Logan the last 2 years. His name is Cade DeBoard. He's a good player with some size and some ability.
Yeah, I watched him play that opener, and Jerome nose to chest on the defense. If he went to the bathroom, we had a kid going with him. And it was basically one of those things that, I want to know what kind of gum he's chewing by the end of the game. I mean, there were no help, no cover defense. But this kid could create, he would spin and move and hit fadeaways. I mean, he was a natural scorer, and he was the guy that you just couldn't sleep on at all. You give him an inch and he's burying a 3. This kid is an offensive player, and you're going to hear his name this season quite a bit. And Buell and head coach Dan Wynn. Dan Wynn's a good friend of mine, and he's going to know what to do with this kid. He's a heck of a good basketball coach, but now he's got a kid that he can just go to. And we talked about it earlier. When you need that bucket, who do you go to? Well, Buell has somebody that they can go to, and it's making everybody else better around them.
Yeah, good coaches up and down the league as well, right? You mentioned Coach Wynn at Buell, Rob Anderson at Filer, Coach Gary at Kimberly, and a new coach at Gooding this year, Tanner Bauman. So,
yeah, you do. I mean, not only they got great players, they got some good coaches in that conference as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch that league as the season goes on. The 2A conference, the Canyon Conference, last year, Valley just had a great season, right? 19-4, 4-0 in the conference, but they lost the game they needed to win against Wendell in the district title game. Wendell gets to state, and not only does Wendell get to state, but they get a win at state, and they play Ambrose in the 2A semifinals. So Wendell has a lot of good players coming back. They really struggled to score the ball at times last year, but they were so good defensively. And for Valley, they're feeling like, okay, we didn't finish last year. We need to finish stronger this season.
Yeah, we talk about those where a team just cruises through a season and then just stumbles down the stretch. And that can take you one of two ways. I mean, that could just totally crush your spirits or can fire you up a little bit, saying we are not going to let this happen again. And for Valley, I think they're going to learn from that and they're going to come back strong. I mean, Valley got some players, Kyle Christensen and Omar Campos are going to lead the way for Valley. And I see Valley having a pretty good season. I mean, 19-4 last year, and they're just going to build from that, learn their lessons, and try to get to state and make some noise. Now, Wendell was that team that just got hot, at the right time. Only 2-2 in the conference, 17-9 overall last year, but they played their best basketball in the most important games, and that's what good teams do, and that's what Wendell does. And Coach Kelsey over there. I mean, we talk about a basketball family. They understand those situations, and I think that's a big part of Wendell's success is you got family over there in the Kelsey name that just understands basketball, and that transcends to the kids in the way that they approach and understand the game.
Yeah, so I was broadcasting the 2A state tournament last year for IdahoSports.com. So I got to talk to Coach Kelsey from Wendell quite a bit leading into it. And, I asked him, I said, well, what do you guys do well? And he goes, I don't know. We're just kind of solid at everything. There's not really one. We just show up and play. And, he was so excited last year because he felt that Wendell is a school that people kind of look down upon sometimes. And, well, you're never good in anything. And, you don't have the best, players and facilities and et cetera. And he said for them to get to state was like a big deal for that program and really the school and the community as well. He said he really thought it could be a game changer.
Yeah, and I think so. And, we saw their football team have some success this year in a program that isn't normally having any success. So that tends to build tighter communities. And now with this basketball team coming back and they're, two returning starters coming back in Torres and Kelsey, they've got some state experience now. They've got big game experience, and that's going to pay dividends for Wendell down the road.
Declo, we'll see how they do. They took third last year. Jacoby Fox is a good coach for Declo, but tough sledding with Valley and Wendell. I think a step ahead of the Hornets. But
yeah, no, I think so too. I mean, Declo's going to have Caden Ramsey that's going to really have to carry the load for them, but you're right. There's going to be some separation in that conference for sure.
1A D1 classification. This was a tough one to peg again. In the preseason coaches poll, Oakley was picked first, but I can tell you by looking at the ballots, it was kind of all over the place. Oakley 1, Raft River 2. That's how it was in football this year. Do you think it's going to happen in boys basketball?
I don't know why it wouldn't. I mean, it's the same athletes, Are they just going to be a little bit better at football than basketball this year? I mean, you look at a team like Oakley, it's, Cody Beck in his first season at the helm there is, he's got some players to work with. I mean, he's got Peyton Beck, senior, Porter Pickett, and Isaac Cranny coming back. And, it's not like the cupboard's bare for Oakley, but there's enough there that where people think that Oakley is going to be that team to beat.
Yeah, Cody Beck was the JV coach at Oakley for 10 years. So he knows the program and he knows what to do there. Raft River gets the nod. Seth Tracy is going to be their main guy. He's a good post player. They did lose a somewhat significant senior class. Ryan Spaeth was kind of their go-to guy last year, but for Raft River, I think the reputation got them the number 2 spot in the poll. I'll tell you a team that I'm really high on, and I guess I don't want to jump ahead here, but Lighthouse Christian was picked third. I think Lighthouse could be good. Clay Silva, Jack DeYoung, they kind of have a good, proud basketball tradition. I like Murtaugh. I think Murtaugh is going to be a sneaky boys basketball team. They were picked to tie for 4th with Glens Ferry in the preseason coaches poll, but Junior Benitez, he's a stud. Doesn't matter what sport it is, what ball he's picking up. Junior Benitez is just a dude. And I really like the pairing of him and Freddie Martinez at Murtaugh.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, Junior's one of those kids that is just an athlete. Like you said, you could give him a checkerboard and somehow he's going to out-athlete you on the checkerboard. I mean, that's just the kind of kid that you've got there. But the pairing is the most interesting thing because, you don't want kids to be carrying it all by themselves. You want a little help. And I think, Freddie Martinez is going to be that guy that's going to be the Robin to the Batman, if you will. And, those two with some chemistry on the basketball floor could get something together. That could be, like you said, a sneaky Murtaugh team.
It was so weird last year. Murtaugh went 11-14 overall, but just 3-7 in the conference. Shoshone was 4-17 overall, but all four of those wins came in the league 4-6. They actually finished ahead of Murtaugh, even though Murtaugh had a significantly better overall record. It's kind of one of those weird quirks.
Yeah, it is, and it's all the game's all about matchups anyway. Some teams just match up well against others and are built to beat you. So. Yeah, Shoshone had the number of some of the teams in their conference this year, but, they've got their work to do this year for sure.
Yep, I think so. 1A D2. This is the other conference that I think is going to be just so fun to watch night in, night out, because again, I got all of these preseason coaches polls from the coaches, and it was tight across the board. Camas County was the preseason favorite. They get the number one spot in the poll. They were 1 point ahead of Cary, who got the second spot in the poll, and Cary was 1 point ahead of Dietrich, who got the third spot in the poll. And really, from what I'm gathering, really 1 through 7, it could be anybody's game any night. Hagerman is kind of rebuilding with a new coach in Micah Pope, but the other 7 teams all could beat up on each other all year long.
Oh, I see this conference as one of those that we talk about. Okay, let's take a look at the preseason rankings. Let's see where they finish and see if they're anywhere close. Because, I mean, you take all these teams and put them in a hat and you start drawing them out. You know, I don't know if anybody'd argue with the way they came out for the most part. But yeah, you know, you talk about the Camas counties, the Carys and the Dietrichs. And, you know, even Castleford's bringing back, you know, some pretty good players in Ethan Rowland and Eric Taylor. And we talked about Eric Taylor a lot during football, you know, so they've got athletes there. I mean, you look up and down this, and, you know, Richfield with Luke Dalton and Clay Kent. And man, where do you stop? I mean, I think the only thing that people are agreeing on is you got a couple of teams in there that are rebuilding a little bit, you know, Hagerman being one of them. But they got a good guy to do the job. You know, Micah was my athletic assistant here last year. He worked in my office, and just a super dude, and you know, super passionate. Again, Pope name in basketball is a pretty significant name as well. So he's gonna get Hagerman going in the right direction. But you know, like you said, man, this conference, wow, this could be a lot of fun.
Camas County's got some guys: Dawson Kramer, Tristan Smith, and Brecken Clark, who this week or last week crossed the 1,000 point barrier in his career, which is, you know, not every guy does that. So Brecken Clark at Camas County is going to be a guy to keep an eye on. Cary, you know, it's a lot of the guys we heard in football season: Connor Simpson, Carson Perks. Here's kind of an underreported story. Carson Perks went to Richfield last year. He was at Richfield the first 2 years of his high school career. He was the conference MVP last year at Richfield. Well, now he's playing for Cary, and not only did he quarterback them to the state championship game of football, but you know, he's trying to repeat as the conference's best player, although it's at a rival school now in Cary. Yeah,
just right down the road, Richfield and Cary. If you're not familiar with the area, they're not too far apart. You know, not quite Tobacco Road, but it's close enough because both those schools are out in the middle of nowhere. And they're small towns. And, you know, it makes you wonder kind of what that's going to do for a team like Richfield. It's like, hey, you know, is that going to be a little bit of locker room fodder to get them going, or what's going to happen? Or is Carson Parks just going to say, you know what, I'm a stud and I'm going to have my way, because that kid is a stud.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Connor Simpson is another guy who's going to really take a step forward for Cary. Dietrich, you know, again, like most of these schools at the smallest level, they all played football. Jet Shaw, Cody Power, Coach Estelle is really, really good. Or excuse me, Coach Wayne Dill at Dietrich. He's been coaching a long time. He's one of the best around, so you can never count out Dietrich. Dietrich got hot at the right time last year, right? They got all the way to the championship game where they fell to that juggernaut Garden Valley, but they're just a team that always seems to play well when it counts.
Well, and again, Dietrich is just one of those gamer towns. You know, you talk about Dietrich, and I think we had this conversation with girls basketball, is that it's Dietrich, you know, and that's all you need to say. Dietrich just knows how to win. Yeah, they're going to have their off years here and there, but man, when you talk about Dietrich Blue Devil athletics, they just know how to win. They're just good.
And then the last team, the team that's going to be a real wild card, is going to be the Cutthroats from Sun Valley Community School. Clay Warner is their coach. Yeah, he was their coach last year, although if you look at the standings last year, you're going to see that they only played 3 games. They went 1-2. They didn't get to play at all during the regular season. They only played at the district tournament, got a win, went 1-2. So they're going to be kind of the biggest unknown entering the season.
Well, it is. And it goes right back to what we were talking about earlier, playing up in that Blaine County, Wood River Valley area. You know, how much was that time off going to hurt them? Because we talked earlier about experience. You know, well, we're bringing back 7 seniors, but, you know, we played 3 games last year. Who cares? You don't have experience. you have older kids. And so that's what a lot of these schools are finding themselves in right now is that lack of experience. But, it will be a mystery for the community school because, they do have some players coming back with 3 games of experience. So we'll see.
Yeah. And then Hanson lost one of the more fun athletes to watch over the past couple of years in Jonathan Camarillo, because he was a big guy with size and he did things with the ball that guys his size aren't supposed to do in football and basketball. And now he's gone, but he's got a younger Camarillo stepping in. Tom Gibson is back for Hanson. And so they could be sneaky as well.
Yeah, they could. I mean, Camarillo is just one of those kids that you just don't replace. He meant so much to that team. He, played varsity for 4 years, 3-year varsity starter, and he just did everything. And he's a kid that Hanson's going to struggle replacing. So it may take them a little bit to kind of find their stride, get their footing, after losing a big player like that.
Well, that's our tour of the Magic Valley boys basketball scene. I've got a feeling, kind of like football, there's going to be a lot of Magic Valley teams still standing on the final day at state this year, that final Saturday of the season.
I hope so. There's a lot of good players down here. And when you look at our conferences, from the 1A D2s all the way up to the 4As, you could point out some teams that you think, man, this team could make some noise at state. This team could make some noise at state, and I hope they do. It's good for our valley and good for the region.
The other nice thing is we get a lot of those cross classification matchups, right? 3As will play 2As, 4As will play 3As. There's not that restriction like in football where there's a clear cutoff of 8-man versus 11-man. The 1As can play the 2As. Some 1As play 3As. Up north, Scott, did you see this? Up north, Lapway is going to play Coeur d'Alene in basketball, boys basketball, 1A D1 against a 5A. I love it.
Oh, I love that. That is what we need to see. That, and it can only happen in basketball, and I'm so excited for that game just to see, because everybody loves the underdog and the Cinderella story and man, I did hear that, and I can't wait. We need a lot of that.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of fun matchups in the Magic Valley throughout the course of the year as well. We'll be here each and every week to break it all down with you. Wrestling getting into the swing of things as well. And speech and debate also off and running. What did I see? It's the speech championships for last week.
Drama was.
Or drama. Right. Drama. Okay.
Yeah, I still help run the speech team here. We don't do our stuff until end of March, beginning of April.
Oh, wow. Okay, much later.
Yeah. So we can talk all about that then.
Still getting my bearings on. In Montana, it's all combined into the speech, drama, debate. It's all one. It's all in the winter. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, it's all spread out here.
Like most things in Idaho, it's very spread out. So.
Yeah, it is. It's so different than what you're used to.
Definitely. All right. Well, that'll do it for this week's edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast. For Scott Burton and Scott's intern.
Yeah, my 8-year-old intern and my 6-year-old intern have been hiding behind the desk while I do the podcast.
For 2 seconds.
They did great. I didn't hear a peep the entire way, so that was great. Thank you for tuning in to the Magic Valley Prepcast. We'll see you next time on IdahoSports.com.